That's worse than a construction site latrine. But then, I realized something. A normal coffin shouldn't smell this foul. I knew right then I had hit the jackpot. I hauled the entire coffin out of the hole and tossed my shovel aside. I reached for my custom flamethrower. I'd built it myself using 2 butane canisters and a torch head. It had massive firepower but a kickback that could dislocate a shoulder. I'd wrapped the handle in 3 layers of bike tires just to keep my grip. I didn't hesitate. I kicked the lid with everything I had. Boom! The lid flew off, and a wave of freezing air slapped me in the face. As the dust settled, I saw that the thing inside wasn't human. Its skin was a bloated, sickly blue-green, looking like waterlogged pork. It had no eyes, no nose, just a massive horizontal slit stretching from ear to ear. Rows of jagged teeth were matted with blackened bits of flesh. Its fingernails looked like rusted iron nails, and every time it twitched, chunks of rotten meat fell off, revealing writhing white maggots underneath. The worst part was its stomach. It was swollen and pulsing, as if something alive was trapped inside, kicking against the skin. My heart skipped a beat. What the hell was this? It wasn't a zombie. I didn't care. Whatever it was bad news, and I needed to see if my system would react. I pulled the trigger. A roar of fire engulfed the coffin. The sound of sizzling flesh mixed with a high-pitched shriek that sounded like nails dragging across glass. My eardrums throbbed. The recoil numbed my arms, and the rubber on the handle started to fray, but I held on. The heat scorched my face and curled my eyebrows. Come on, I thought. Give me something. Just as I shouted internally, the creature's eyes snapped open. They were milky white, staring straight at me. Its screams grew louder, shaking the surrounding trees. I actually smiled. This was it. This was a real monster. It seemed pinned down, unable to move. I had spent years searching, digging up 18 graves across half the city just to find one living specimen. People watch horror movies for a thrill. I watched them to desensitize myself. But the screen was nothing compared to the real thing. Slowly, the screaming stopped. The charred thing in the coffin went still. Suddenly, I heard the sound of pages flipping rapidly in my mind. Ghost Containment Prison Registry. Detected near-death entity. Executing containment. Target, Shura Tribe, Fetal Ghost. Reward, Shura Path, Beginner. Shura Path. Nothing is uncuttable. A surge of warmth rushed from my forehead to my toes. I felt a strange power coursing through me. I instinctively swiped my hand toward a nearby locust tree, half a foot thick. SSHHKT. The tree was sliced clean through. The cut was as smooth as a mirror, not even a jagged piece of bark left behind. The trunk crashed to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. I stood there, stunned for 3 seconds, then I collapsed into a fit of laughter. 18 years. I had finally made it. I started this life on hell mode. No parents, leaving the orphanage at 14 to fend for myself. I spent my days hauling bricks and my nights studying, surviving on crumbs and scholarships. I had even considered re-rolling my life once or twice, thinking maybe dying would trigger the system. I'm glad I didn't. Now, I could cut through the sky if I wanted to. I dropped the flamethrower, sat on the dirt, and lit a cigarette. I took a long drag and exhaled, letting out 18 years of suppressed frustration. For the first time, I felt truly secure. I looked at the charred remains in the hole and gave it the middle finger. Thanks, brother. I'll burn some high-end incense for you later. I had risked everything digging tonight because I knew this world wasn't simple. It had technology, sure, but it also had origin brands. 1,000 years ago, alien races invaded, and humans only survived by awakening these brands. Tomorrow, June 10th, was awakening day for every 18-year-old in the country. Your result determined your entire life. But I wasn't worried anymore. My path was set. I was going to hunt monsters. I made my way back to my small apartment in the relocation housing project. I'd lived here for 4 years. It was a dump, but at 400 yuan a month for a one-bedroom, I couldn't complain. The government had given it to me because of my orphan status and high grades. Now that I had real power, I didn't want to take up state resources anymore. It was time to move. I reached room 1406, showered off the filth of the graveyard, and started packing my clothes on the balcony. As I looked out the window, something caught my eye. The voice-activated lights in the courtyard below went out. But they didn't just fade. They vanished, as if the darkness itself had swallowed them. The lights flickered out starting from the first floor, moving up level by level. I leaned against the window and looked down. Standing right at the entrance of my building was something that definitely wasn't human. It had pale, grayish-blue skin, and its hands were a cluster of a dozen writhing tentacles. It tilted its faceless head back, staring straight at my window. I realized instantly that this thing was here for me. It was likely related to that fetus ghost I had just incinerated in the graveyard. I couldn't believe it. Did these monsters think I was an easy target? A wave of irritation washed over me. I had just unlocked the Shura slashes. I wasn't about to be intimidated by some freak show in my own backyard. I dropped the clothes I was holding, leaned over the windowsill, and gave the creature 2 middle fingers. I had been looking for a way to test my new powers, and this thing had delivered itself right to my doorstep. It was practically begging to die. The humanoid monster lunged forward, charging into the building. Its tentacles dragged on the concrete as it scrambled up the stairwell with terrifying speed. Great. It was a buy one, get one free deal on monsters tonight. What kind of hellish promotion was this? I knew I couldn't fight it inside my apartment. The space was too cramped. I quickly laced up my shoes, stepped out, and shut off the hallway lights. I waited at the top of the 14th floor landing, listening. The darkness below was alive. I could hear the wet, sliding sound of tentacles and the rhythmic drip-drip of thick fluid hitting the stairs. The motion sensor light on the 11th floor clicked on, then the 12th, then the 13th. I could feel it now. The thing was just around the corner of the 13th floor. The tentacles reached the landing first, followed by a sudden burst of light as the 14th floor sensor triggered. My adrenaline spiked. The moment the light flashed on, I didn't hesitate. I swung my hand, unleashing a Shura slash. The cold blade of energy tore through the darkness and slammed directly into the monster's chest. The impact was massive. The 2-meter-tall shadow was thrown back, smashing into the wall with enough force to strip the plaster down to the concrete. Under the buzzing fluorescent light, I finally saw the thing clearly. It was pitch black and covered in thick, pulsing tentacles. It had no eyes, no nose, just a giant, gaping maw filled with jagged, needle-like teeth. 2 glowing red orbs, large as light bulbs, stared at me from the void of its face. "Man, you're too ugly to be out here seeking revenge," I muttered. I frowned and fired off another slash without a second of startup. The monster sensed the lethal threat and ducked, but it was a fraction of a second too slow. The blade caught the top of its skull, slicing the crown clean off. Dark green, viscous fluid sprayed across the floor. The creature let out a high-pitched, piercing shriek of agony. Its mouth flew open, and a dozen barbed tentacles shot toward my face like arrows. Before my brain could even process the movement, my body reacted on its own. My heel pivoted half an inch. The tentacles whistled past my cheek, pinning themselves into the wall behind me. They didn't even touch a strand of my hair. A cold smile tugged at my lips. Is that all? Just die already. Before the monster could retract its limbs, I delivered a horizontal backhand slash. The blade cut through its neck like a hot wire through butter. The massive head tumbled to the floor, those red eyes still glaring at me with resentment. The headless torso twitched and scrambled, trying to crawl away. I walked over to the dying heap. "Now you want to run? You were so brave coming up those stairs." I gathered the last bit of energy into my left hand. "Don't struggle. I'll send you on your way. No need to thank me." I brought my hand down, adding 2 more cross slashes for good measure until the creature was carved into 4 distinct pieces. Suddenly, a notification echoed in my mind. The Ghost Containment Ledger had detected a near-death entity. It executed the containment protocol. I had captured a tentacle aberration, lure type. A new reward flashed, Ultra Instinct, initial stage. It described a state of no self, a harmony between heaven and man where the body avoids danger automatically. It came with a 100% boost to all attributes and a massive bonus to both combat and cultivation efficiency. A surge of pure, warm energy flooded my veins. I almost groaned from the sheer comfort of it. No wonder I had dodged those tentacles without thinking. The power had kicked in early. I looked down at the remains. The body was already starting to dissolve. I used a few small, precise slashes to shave down the marks on the walls and the holes from the tentacles. I swept the concrete dust and green slime into a pile and tossed it out the hallway window. It landed perfectly in the dumpster below. The fight had been quiet and fast. A few neighbors had flicked their lights on, grumbling about idiots doing renovations at midnight. But they went back to sleep when they saw nothing in the hall. I brushed the dust off my shirt and went back inside. The next morning, Yunhai City felt like a steamer. The June sun was already baking the pavement. I woke up to my alarm, stretched, and felt my bones pop and crackle. Instead of feeling tired from the midnight brawl, I felt electrified. So this was what it felt like to be an Awakened. 1,000 years ago, the invasion of alien races nearly wiped us out. Humans only survived because we discovered origin brands. Today, June 10th, was the National Awakening Day for every 18-year-old in the country. I finished washing up, grabbed my bag, and headed down. The breakfast stalls at the complex entrance were already busy. The smell of steamed buns and soy milk filled the air. "Uncle, 2 meat buns and a cup of soy milk," I said. "Oh, Lin Yuan. It's Awakening Day, isn't it?" Uncle smiled as he packed my food. "Good luck, kid. Try to get a B rank or higher. You'll be set for life. My boy awakened an F rank kitchen knife last year. Now he's here selling buns with me. Well, at least he's safe. Better than dying on the front lines." I thanked him and paid. F rank. That was the fate for most people. Origin brands were ranked from F to A, with S and the legendary universal ranks above those. F ranks were usually household items, chopsticks, mops, or dull knives. They lacked the spiritual power to form a full origin seed, meaning those people would stay ordinary forever. You needed at least a D rank to be considered a true Awakened. I ate my breakfast as I walked to the bus stop. The bus was packed with high school seniors in uniforms, their faces a mix of hope and sheer terror. "Did you hear? Wang Hao's brother got an A-rank thunder axe last year," one kid whispered. "The military recruited him instantly. He makes tens of thousands a month now." "Don't even dream about it," another replied. "A ranks are rare. I'd be happy with AC. If I get an F, my parents are going to kill me." Anxiety hung heavy in the air. I leaned against the window, watching the city blur past. I felt strangely calm. I knew the world wasn't fair. The kids from wealthy families had been using expensive spirit stones and medicinal baths to cleanse their marrow for years. Their chances of hitting an A rank were dozens of times higher than ours. But as I felt the power thrumming under my skin, I knew my path was going to be very different. Materials extracted from secret realms were rare. The noble families, the military, and the top universities monopolized everything. A common person might go their entire life without seeing even a low-grade spirit stone. Most people had to rely on the slowest, most grueling methods to improve their strength. Thankfully, I didn't have to walk that path. Others spent decades grinding for combat experience or risking their lives for a breakthrough. I just had to kill ghosts and monsters to take their abilities directly. It was a cheat code far more unreasonable than any martial arts technique. I didn't care if I started with an F rank. Even if I awakened a toothpick as my origin brand, I knew I could eventually slay an S-rank god. The bus pulled up to the stop. I stepped off and looked up at the gates of Yunhai City First High School. A massive red banner hung above the entrance, wishing every student success in their awakening and a bright future. I hated crowds. I especially hated being stared at with pity or false expectation. The awakening ceremony followed a strict order by class, and Class 1 was always last. I wasn't in a rush. I adjusted my backpack and slipped into the side of the teaching building instead of heading to the field. The classroom for Class 1 was empty when I arrived. Desks were scattered and crooked. A few stray exam papers fluttered on the floor. I walked to my usual seat by the window and sat down. I pulled a pack of cigarettes from my pocket and put one between my lips. Just as I flicked my lighter, the back door creaked open. "Smoking again? I thought you weren't coming today." Rinyu walked in and snatched the pack of cigarettes out of my hand with practiced ease. He pulled one out for himself, took my lighter, and leaned back, exhaling a thick cloud of smoke right next to me. "You really don't hold back, do you?" I laughed, shaking my head. "You're a teacher. Smoking with a student isn't exactly good for your reputation. Though, I have to admit, seeing you in a suit for once, you actually look like a decent human being." I leaned my chin on my hand, glancing at him lazily. Reputation is just noise. I don't care, Rinyu said, waving his hand dismissively. He blew a smoke ring and turned serious. So, why are you hiding in here? Are you planning to skip the awakening? Awakening? Of course I'm going, I said. My voice was calm, almost indifferent. If I happen to hit an S rank, how do you think I should enjoy my wonderful new life? I took one last drag, crushed the cigarette, and tossed it into the trash can. I stood up and headed for the door. To be honest, the awakening doesn't mean much to me anymore, I called back over my shoulder. Even if I get an F rank, I'll still be invincible in this world. My voice faded as I walked down the hallway. Rinyu stayed behind, surrounded by blue smoke. He watched the throngs of students gathered on the field through the window and whispered to himself. Doesn't mean much? Interesting. This kid is definitely hiding something. He stubbed out his cigarette and hurried to catch up. Down on the field, all 23 classes of the senior year were lined up in neat rows. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Some students had their fists clenched so hard their knuckles were white. Others were praying silently with their eyes shut. A few tried to look cool, but their legs were shaking like leaves in the wind. I'm so nervous, one student muttered. What if I get an S rank? What should I do? Keep dreaming, his friend barked. If you get an S rank, I'll eat every piece of crap you drop today. Just say you have a weird appetite, man. You don't need to make an excuse. Brother, how are you so calm? Another kid asked his neighbor. Simple. If I fail, I'll just go home and live off my parents' money. I'm so jealous. Wait, why is your hand shaking then? Oh, this? I just spent too much time practicing in my room lately. A sharp, piercing feedback noise erupted from the speakers, and the field went silent. Every head turned toward the high platform. The principal of Yunhai First High stood at the podium. I won't waste your time with long speeches, he announced. I wish you all an origin brand that satisfies you. I hereby declare the awakening ceremony officially open. As he spoke, 15 men and women in dark green military uniforms marched out from the side of the stage. They were tall, sharp-eyed, and moved with a rhythmic power that only came from years of combat. These were the awakening officers, elite soldiers sent by the state, standing independent of any local power.